At the pinnacle of his power, a man risks losing control. The world is not kind, so its king has become cruel. Murder is never mercy, it's never noble, and it's never redeemable. To the maniac, murder is an art form.
What is happening to God say something?
Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live. I'm joined today by an internet, a prominent voice on the internet for the horror genre, ReanimateHer. A bunch of places we can find her, a bunch of places we can watch a lot of content, not new to the game, but putting out a lot of extraordinary content that reminds me a lot of when we used to have real horror hosts. I don't mean the like kind of reinvented horror hosts of today, whereas that's a little bit contrived. I mean, back in the day when it was very, very real, thrown together, ramshackle, but awesome horror hosts who actually kind of formed our childhoods. Hey, Ree, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Hello, everyone. Hey, Dill.
It's about 1,000,000 degrees here is what it is, and all humidity. And I was outside working in soil all day, so I'm sweaty and upset and ugly and horrible. And here I am. We're lucky there's a horror podcast, huh?
Right.
Right, exactly. So you're the real deal. You're truly a horror fan, and I don't believe in real horror fans per se, because I think that's kind of just obnoxious. But you definitely walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah, I call myself a fanatic. I mean, there's horror fans that, they like horror, and then there's some that just like, a couple horror movies, but then there's fanatics that really enjoy it. You collect it, you read about it, you live it, and what you do for work. I'm fanatic.
Yep. There is definitely such a thing as horror culture, and it's definitely not a player for everyone.
No.
For some people, just even people who watch a lot of horror movies, it's not necessarily a component of their life. But at the point where you're seriously looking at a ridiculously overpriced ice cube tray in the shape of Jason Voorhees masks, and you're thinking, I can justify this somehow. And you're the only one who'll ever feel that way about it. Congratulations.
Exactly.
You're part of horror culture. So how did this journey begin for you? How did you discover horror? At what age? And what was it that was the stepping stone drug for you?
I was very young. I was around the age 5-ish, 6 in that area. And my aunts were young, but they were babysitting me. And they were watching on television Friday the 13th, the first part. And they were watching it with me. I obviously probably did not know really what was going on at that age. But that was my first memory of horror. And then Thanksgiving time, Godzilla would play. So as a kid, I seen those things, and I had cousins that would watch reruns of Vampira, and then Svengoolie and Vincent Price, and that is what started my love for horror. I started at a very young age.
We're kind of in sync here because, and I don't mean the band, because realistically, I mean, the ABC network premiere of the original Friday the 13th and Godzilla flicks on the weekends on Channel 13 is pretty much where my life started. UHF and ABC. It's just how it is.
Yep.
And, that original television print of Friday the 13th, it was scratchy and too dark to tell what was going on. So I don't think it was your age. I think that just the entire climax of the film pretty much takes place in pitch darkness, except for the waking up next morning chair jumper scene at the very end. But the film was still able to get us despite a horrible television presentation without being cut to hell. The gore was gone. The nudity wasn't gone, by the way. If you will go back to that original television print, it was just so dark that you couldn't see anything, so they didn't cut it.
And you had antennas, right? You had to mess around with those antennas if they weren't working right.
For UHF, we certainly did, because there was an antenna on the roof, but that didn't help you with UHF.
No, those rabbit ears.
Oh, no, exactly.
Tin foil.
So, was there any other influences? Were you into reading horror or horror magazines?
I liked horror. Anything. As I got older in my early teens, Fangoria caught my eye. My mother wouldn't buy me a lot of this stuff, but I had cousins that were a lot older than me that were into somewhat of the horror genre, and Fangoria was one of the first things that I seen and started reading, and it just connected with me there, and I've been collecting them ever since.
How approximately what year did you find Fangoria? Was it during the Bob Martin era, or was it the Tony Timpone? Do you know?
It was 86.
Definitely Timpone. So,
I wasn't even a full teenager yet. So I remember my cousins having them and reading them, and they were completely a different type of magazine feel to them from nowadays, right?
Oh yeah, there was 8 pages of glossy in the center of them. The rest of it was a little bit better than newsprint. And back in the real early days, the cover was actually a poster on the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
So a ton of issues that you can find that are very hard to find from that era with the covers on. If you don't want the covers, you can find them, but the covers were on walls. And you want to know what? That makes me so happy, because that's where the covers belonged. They were loved.
I agree.
Someone woke up to them every morning. So don't be so upset when it's hard to find or expensive. It means it did its job.
That it did.
I was lucky enough that I caught the tail end of the first run of Famous Monsters of Filmland and Monster World, Forey Ackerman's attempt to do it all over, which only lasted a few issues. And then I discovered Fangoria like you. And I think one of the big breakthroughs for me was that there was other people out there, enough to support a magazine, that felt this way about this stuff. Because it wasn't like if I went to school, I could talk to people and they would chime in, oh yeah, no, I loved Halloween. It just didn't happen.
No.
So how did you find your people in those early days? Or did you?
No. It was when you would be like, oh, I enjoy horror movies, and all your friends are watching Rocky, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all of those guys, right? There wasn't many people besides my own family members that actually watched horror that I talked horror with. And then as I got older, still, it was less and less to find people who really enjoyed it unless you started going to horror cons, but those didn't exist in the early 90s. Didn't exist for where I lived in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I have 2 major metropolitan areas near me. So I could go to Manhattan and I could go to the Creation Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. And
so jealous.
Yeah. Well, those were a completely different experience than what it is today.
I'm sure it is. It's completely night and day. I used to go to horror cons, the Chiller Con, which was, I want to say 2004, 2003, and I would go to them every year. And you'd meet celebrities from the horror industry, and they'd sit and they talk to you. It was like, even if they charge $5 for their autograph, you go now, $75 for Kane Hodder, $150 for this one, $250 for Robert Englund. I'm like, what?
Yeah, because they realize there's a market, and unfortunately, I don't mean this any other way than it's going to sound, but a lot of these guys will make more money working 7 conventions a year than they'll make from their actual acting or whatever they do. And that's the sad reality of it. It used to be just about validation. A generation ago, when you used to run across the Night of the Living Dead guys and the Hammer ladies, and it was different. They were just amazed that anyone cared.
Yeah.
But today, unfortunately, and the reps got involved too. All the agents got involved. They all said, wait a second, you're making money. So am I then. But most of the time at a horror convention in the early 90s, you would spend in an auditorium watching people speak on a stage.
Yeah.
It was not spent around a table for signings. It was not spent in a merch room, which was 90% stuff you could buy anywhere and 10% things that were handmade and look at.
Yeah.
It was completely different. I do miss those days. I also miss being able to breathe in horror conventions.
You used to be able to sit down and chit chat. Now the lineups are 4 hours long. It took me like 4 hours to get the signature of Bruce Campbell. I wasn't leaving that lineup, but 4 hours. I stood in friggin' line.
So next time, wait till he puts another book out and go to a book signing.
Go to a book signing.
It's about a third of the people.
Yeah, most likely. But he doesn't come to Canada much, right? So it's hard to do those things when they don't really come to my country. And if they do come to my country, they don't come to my province.
Yeah. That's something I get very spoiled about. I have everything come to me.
Yep. Every American, you guys are lucky.
Not every American. You'll talk to some of the people in the chat right now. They'll tell you where they are. There's nothing. But
you can probably travel to them a lot quicker. So for me to get to Toronto, if I was to drive, it would take me almost a week. Where if you had a horror con in the neighboring state, it would probably take you less than a week.
Oh, my closest horror convention is a half hour away annually. Yeah. It's not my favorite though. So you find horror. You're watching Friday the 13th on a television cut, and it didn't matter. It still infected you.
Yep.
You find Fangoria. You find you're getting to be an older teen. At what point do you start renting the hard stuff?
Oh, when we have those mom and pop video shops and VHS. They always have their little dirty corner of like really gory horror films. I was about 16 when I rented this film. I can't remember the name of it. But it was snuff-like. And to me, it really seemed real. And so I'm going to say about 16 snuff type of films. But by the time I was 16, I've already seen slashers and psychologicals and all of that stuff. Snuff films were more of a gory thing than like a Friday the 13th slasher.
So now we get past all that and we're to today. And the market's changed. Streaming has made almost everything available to us, but on the other side of it, it's made the horror genre kind of a more popular place where we have The Walking Dead on network television. This would be unthinkable in the 80s, the level of popularity. And while I love the Big Tent, there's no question that some of the change has come at the cost of the films being so individual.
Yeah, independent filmmaking is very, very hard. Very hard. I talk to a lot of independent filmmakers, and they have some great films and great ideas, but getting big movies to back them or any kind of investors, it's hard, and it's hurt that genre of the indie film industry in horror, what horror started out as. Horror was never mainstream. It was never that popular. People didn't want it in their theaters. They protested, right? So to see it all here and see it progress was really nice, but I really wish it scooped up the indie makers as well. They get left in the dust, and some of them have really good content. It's different. It's not the same type of slasher thing that you've seen from 1980, so forth, right?
Absolutely. I think that Shudder is trying to fix that.
Yeah.
I had Aaron Kuntz, the creator of Scare Package, on Monday. He was sitting where you're sitting, except nowhere near really. And the reason I have people like him on is because they are the ones trying to move the needle in what I consider the right direction, which is stop with the test marketing. Stop with assuming you know who the audience is. Start with a great script, a great idea, have some passion, hire the right people, and go. It doesn't seem like brain surgery to me.
No.
So a big part of your presence online revolves around horror gaming.
Yep, I do a lot of horror gaming and I do some web shows.
Yeah. Let's go to the horror gaming because this is the point where I'm going to be completely out of my depth.
Yeah.
So I don't game at all. I just I grew up with Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, and that's pretty much where it stayed. A lot of Dig Dug, actually. Dig Dug was my game.
Dig Dug's fun.
But today, the video game industry is larger than the motion picture industry. It's not even a close race. So you're in a better place to talk about the state of horror video games and what's exciting and what is you think the future.
Horror, it's still very niche in the gaming industry. They're not as well known as, if you say Call of Duty or Fortnite. So you can say Those Who Remain is a psychological thriller, and guarantee probably nobody, unless you actually are in the horror gaming industry, would know about that game. I think VR horror is like the next thing. I also notice currently now more asymmetrical horror games are popping up.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Because I have no idea.
Oh, asymmetrical horror. Have you seen the game Dead by Daylight? It'll make sense if I give you a game that you may have seen.
I know what it is.
Friday the 13th?
Yeah, I know what they are.
Horror game. You have a few people that are survivors, and their goal is to escape, whether to escape through a hatch or by killing the killer. For Friday the 13th, you're killing Jason Voorhees or he murders you. There's X amount of ways to get out. It's an 8-person player game, and it's online. And same thing with Dead by Daylight. Asymmetrical games are usually games also multiplayer, where 4 people are against the killer. That would be Dead by Daylight.
I see. Okay, so you think that's a big part of the future?
It's already here. I see more games coming, but what I'm seeing is where I'm seeing a lot of horror stuff is I would like to see would be more VR, which I want to get into. I'm thinking about it for 2021. So I'd like to see more of that. Make it more realistic. I know Resident Evil 7 is VR ready, and you can play it in VR, and I heard it is scary as hell in virtual reality. So I can see that coming with more horror.
Okay, so what is your all-time favorite horror game?
Friday the 13th is like by far my favorite because I get to play Jason Voorhees and murder my friends.
That's something we all, I think, have wanted to do at some point in our lives. So I have friends who play the game or played the game. It seems like it's kind of tailing off now.
Unfortunately.
Don't want to get into the right story because that'll eat up the chat for the next hour and a half.
That it will.
Especially with my opinions on it. So the Friday the 13th game was infamous for having glitches, and not a few of them, like a lot of them.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to derail its popularity at all. Do you think it was just people love the concept so much, or was it just a great game despite it?
It's a new game. It's a new well, I don't want to say it's new concept, but we haven't had a game like this where you get 7 of your friends and you're going up a killer. And it's one, I think that is one of the amazing, exciting aspects of the game. But I also think the fact that it is a horror game made after an iconic killer. And you have Kane Hodder, who did the Jason moves. So I think not only was it the way the game was created and how you play the game, I think a lot of it was the brutality in the game. The game is very brutal. And there are not a lot of games like that. I mean, you can go into FPS games and Call of Duty and stuff, but there's not many horror games that let you rip someone's limbs off and murder them with it, right? And then, giving someone a swirly of death or slamming their head in a door until they're dead. Like I don't think there's really any other video game out there that's like that.
That certainly didn't happen in Dig Dug. I mean, you blew up the things, but...
No, exactly. It didn't happen in most of the older video games either.
So right now, would you say that your fandom is, if you had to give a percentage to film, literature, games, How would you break that down?
What do you mean? How would I break that down? What's like
So
my favorite?
No, I'm saying like if the pie is 100%,
Uh-huh.
what percentage would games be versus movies versus literature versus comic books,
For
whatever?
me, I really like movies. I like video games, don't get me wrong. I love playing them. But I'm gonna say probably for me 75% in horror movies and then cut them down. For me personally would be video games, and then like novels and books would be very small because I don't really like to read too much. I read Fangoria, but it's not like an everyday thing where I'll be opening up and rereading it every day. Video games and movies, yeah, I'll be rewatching a whole bunch of times.
Have you read the new Fangoria?
The one with the comic book cover?
I'm saying that just the new incarnation
Oh,
from the
yeah.
last few
Oh,
years.
yeah. No, I thought you were talking about the newest issue. Yeah, I have a subscription to Fangoria, and I don't have that one yet. When they mail them out to Canada, we always get screwed. So I'm still waiting for I believe it's the 4th volume, of volume 2, number 4 in the series. I did read previous one, and it had Creeperzoid Kelly. I don't know if anybody knows who she is, but
I think all the guests are trying to convince me to go back. I just have a problem with the cover price. We discussed this just a little while ago.
You mean Fangoria's price?
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Well, my problem isn't the money itself. It's what it represents to me. How did we start this conversation? Talk about Fangoria. You discovered Fangoria as a young kid, and it was a really important stepping stone. And I feel like the chances of today's 13, 12-year-old stumbling across Fangoria is absolutely out the window. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's a horrific, horrific mistake.
I'll tell you how much a Fangoria was. 1 second. I have my Jason one here. $11.99 Fangoria magazine was back then. And this was when the release of Freddy vs. Jason. So $11.99 compared to the price tag it is today. Granted, it's, older quality. This is when they stepped up from the newspaper quality up until like the little more heavier plastic type of feel. I think you're really paying this time around not for the same content. I think you're paying for the page quality because now they're thick pages.
And a subscription for 4 issues is $60, right?
$60 for you American, not for me. It's like 100 and change for me to get my subscription.
You see, I feel bad for the people paying it, but I feel worse for the kids that'll never experience it. And they don't have a replacement magazine. Like you could say Rue Morgue,
but again,
it's not cheap either.
Like my kids will be reading these. Like my Spawn, she reads my Fangorias. Now, kids outside of that, unless it's her friends, but yeah, no, they get to miss out on something that helped ignite the love for horror for me.
For an entire generation.
It's sad.
I have the first 100 issues bagged and carded, and a majority of those are from my subscriptions back in the 80s, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. If you count the number of things that I saved from my childhood, it's not much. But the Fangos came along, and I have not picked up one of the new ones because I just can't get my head around what the thought is.
They're expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, and it just doesn't seem like it's even the product itself doesn't seem like it's meant to be for all ages. No, it seems intentionally more adult now.
Yeah,
and I think that for something else that would work, but monster magazines should be monster magazines.
I agree. There is Monster magazine. It's Monsters, but I believe it's an online. It's called Monsters. It is a magazine about monsters and monster movies and horror movies. And then it's also geared at the younger generation. There is a group of people that are on Instagram, and they bring kids into horror. I think it's a really good idea because kids who are interested in horror, they may not be able to watch like Friday the 13th right off the bat, but this group of people introduce children or the youth to horror movies and how they're made and what's behind them. I think that's beneficial, especially with this day and age being the minute they're born, they've got a cell phone in their hand, right? So it's all technology. That's where I think this group of people are actually doing something good. And they're hitting up, they're not hitting up, but the kids that are interested in horror, their parents can get to this website, so forth, and sign up and teach their kids about horror.
That's awesome. Now, I perusing your channel, you do talk classic monsters at points.
Freaking love the classic monsters.
Do you hear this, people? She loves the classic monsters. So everyone here knows my favorite film of all time is Bride of Frankenstein. Everyone knows that Cat People is on my top 15. And I have the 30s. This year I went on a campaign to try and buy every existent horror movie from the 30s.
Oh,
and I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close at this point. But the truth is, like, it's getting harder to get people into films that are approaching 90 years old at this point.
It is, unless you introduce it to them the right way, like I have been doing. I have a show that I do, and I bring back the public domain horror movies like House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price, The Tingler. We recently watched the Little Shop of Horrors, the 1960s version. And I sit there and I give them facts and information about it, and how people who've never seen those movies are like, oh my God, these are great. Can I see more? And I'm like, there's tons of classic black and white films. They really lost their form. It's a lost art form, that black and white films from the 50s and 60s to now. It's something is gone. It's not that same passion or charisma behind it as they did back in Boris Karloff and, Lon Chaney era, right?
Well, it's a matter of cynicism. I had Sarah Karloff on the show a month ago, and
Nice.
talking about her father's work. And the one thing we kind of both agreed was that every work today in the horror genre seems like it has to wink at the audience cynically. There's a lack of fun, and there's also a lack of respect for what they're doing in a lot of cases. I'm not saying in all cases. There's certain films in the last couple of years that I've really championed. More of those are not domestic than you'd imagine, but why do you think there's this gut need for the commercially released, the big theater release horror films to kind of, rather than celebrate the long history of horror, they kind of sneer at it? Why do you think
it's all about the money? About the money.
Do you think they make more money this way, though?
I think they entice a lot of people who like horror to go watch their films. But for Halloween, for example, we will not get into that, but Halloween 2018 and how they marketed that, and I honestly think they make more money that way. And having them out in the theatrical release the way they do them, it's lost its touch. It really has.
Halloween 2018 might be the perfect example. I had a miserable time with it. I
did not like it at all. And now they pushed back Halloween, whatever the stupid name is. But
Halloween Kills, i.e., you better like the idea of Jamie Lee Curtis on a hospital bed for 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got that once, but that was a good movie. I have.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking but here's the weird thing about that. I was talking to friends about this today. They pushed back Halloween because theaters wouldn't be fully open. But the same distribution company, Universal, moved Candyman back a month into its spot. So what does that tell you? That tells you that either they really don't believe in Candyman as a property, which I understand there's problems with that
Jordan
movie too.
Peele?
Well, and it's not, though.
I'm
it's
not a big fan, but
I like his work. I haven't seen the Twilight Zone stuff. He's done.
I like some of his work. I like him as a person. I like him as a horror person. Right? He likes horror. He loves that genre.
Oh, definitely. He's the real deal too. But he's also kind of got that Spielberg touch, which I kind of hate.
He kind of gets preachy for me, though.
Yeah. Well, my thing there, and everyone here is bored to death of hearing me say it. I don't mind messages in movies, whether I agree or disagree. I don't mind them. But as a writer, write a good story, a compelling story first. If your characters are mouthpieces for your ideology, that's a problem.
Yep. I don't want to be shouted out your political agenda. I just want to watch the movie and have a good time. If you can hide your political agenda somewhere in there without ruining my film because you're yelling that at me in my face, great. And that, for instance, I watched a movie called Framed. I highly suggest you watch it if you haven't seen it. It is a Spanish-made horror about live streaming. And it's been out for a couple of years now. And they have a political agenda, but you don't really notice it because it's not throwing it in your face. Actually, really great film if you guys haven't seen it.
So over my shoulder, being blocked by me currently is a poster for the movie Game Over. I'm wearing a t-shirt of it as well. It's a film with a statement and an agenda as well. Right. But it's also the most well-written horror film maybe ever. So
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I just don't see why the message outweighs the story, or a compelling narrative. I shouldn't even say story. A compelling narrative, because it seems to me like you're going to get more people, more respect, and you won't get the backlash. I don't understand why it's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the words "dog versus werewolf" the movie in the chat, and I don't really want to know where they're at, so I'm just going to look away.
Werewolf.
So, and this kind of leads to me to the next note I had to talk to you, because watching your content, I was trying to, looking at things we could riff off of that I thought we'd have, equal points on. And a big issue I take is with big horror, that's the websites, that's the magazines, when they try and continually tell you what you should like and not like, and tell you what you should support and not support. My thing is, I don't love everything everyone else loves. There's titles that everyone else on earth loves to death and I hate. And there's also titles that I will champion every day of the week. There's a Jason X poster like right there. I understand most people don't like it. Cool. I love it. I love it.
It's a great film.
So my thing is just like, we got to get away from having these gatekeepers telling us what we think. That's what's important about your channel. That's what's important about your channel. It's what's hopefully important about my channel, is to give a democracy to the voice and to respect everyone when they have a different opinion.
Yeah, not everyone's going to like the same movie. And there's horror snobs out there. There are. If you didn't see a particular movie, they berate you and they try to make you feel like crap because you didn't see this supposed awesome horror film. I try to steer away from that. We have some horror newbies in my community that we have been coddling and, introducing slowly, some really good ones, classics, and some gory ones, so forth. You have to ease new people into horror. You just can't be throwing all these things at them.
So it looks like your fan base likes Jason X a lot more than mine does. So that's interesting, because I'm constantly championing the film.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. Like, it's out of horror movies and out of the genre of slasher or killer, would be Friday the 13th for me. And my community, we talk about that a lot. As you can tell, I've got masks and all sorts of stuff, and we talk about horror on a regular basis. It's just something we talk about, and Friday the 13th always comes up, and we always have conversations about the whole franchise. So yeah, we do have a pretty big thing with Friday the 13th.
So we're going to get back to Friday the 13th in a second, but I don't want to lose the comment, because actually the comments are moving pretty quickly. Lost Cunningham asks, if you could spend the rest of your life with Vincent Price or Christopher Lee, which one?
Oh my God, that is so hard. That is not an easy question. They're both amazing. I'm going to have to give it to Vincent Price. That mustache that he does is epic.
And he was a gourmet cook, so there's that.
That as well. I mean, Christopher has his accent. That's really cool. No, I really like Christopher Lee. But for me, Vincent Price is, I think, even though it's a hard question, I would have to go with Vincent Price.
I'd have to go with Christopher Lee, only because, I mean, the life is just insane. He taught Errol Flynn how to fence. He was a spy. Sure, He was a spy during World War II for reals.
Mm-hmm.
When Peter Jackson made his Lord of the Rings film, he had no choice but to cast Christopher Lee, because Christopher Lee actually knew how to speak Elvish because he was friends with Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's someone you'd never get bored with.
Very cool. He's had a great life as well. I really like Christopher. I enjoy my Vincent Price. I liked how he is, how he was as a human. His mustache was always the best. I haven't seen a mustache like that at all.
So there you go, guys. Start growing the mustache. But I'm going to cheat and actually re-answer the question, because I always do. And I'm Christopher Lee or Vincent Price. I'm going with Barbara Steele. Sorry. That's how it is. So Friday the 13th. The franchise, I'm in the process of completing this ridiculous video called How Friday the 13th Became the Star Wars of Horror, which is what I believe it is.
Yeah.
Except the difference is there's more good Friday the 13th films than there are Star Wars films at this point.
Yeah.
But Friday is such an interesting thing because very humble beginnings, made intentionally to rip off another film, made for $500,000.
Yeah.
30 minutes from me. And then
Nice.
Absolutely. And then what happens? The film gets picked up by Paramount and the snowball starts growing. If any film shouldn't have caused a revolution in horror, it was Friday the 13th. And yet Sean Cunningham's little thriller really did change everything. I'd say more than Halloween did.
I mean, a lot of people would like to say Carpenter with Halloween, but it's a totally different animal when you look at Jason and Michael. And they're not even the real first slashers to begin with anyways.
Oh, so who do you think the real first slasher is?
Sundown. The Sundown Murders. From Texarkana, 1945. We were just talking about this.
Night of Terror, 1932.
Oh, Night of Terror, 1932.
Yeah, it's a Lugosi vehicle, but it's a mad slasher. It's outright a mad slasher, and that scene from Night of the Creeps with the Lover's Lane with this escaped lunatic is verbatim stolen, frame by frame, from Night of Terror.
That's it. The Night That Dreaded Sundown. When slashers started to make its birth, I mean, you can go back to the 1930s and the 40s and the 50s and bring that, but then again, it stops. And there's a block of time where there is no actual slasher, true on slasher films. And then you have The Town That Dreaded Sundown, which is based on a true story of a guy, which then we get The Babysitter Murders, which is Halloween. And then right after that, you get Friday the 13th. And for part 2 of Friday the 13th, you see Baghead Jason, which is a very replica of what the Sundown Murderer would wear.
The thing is, I think that everyone can find a different starting point, and they're all legit. The Texas Chainsaw Debate will. I'd say that it's a Southern Gothic gore film, but whatever. Again, it doesn't matter what we call things. My point is that you can always find something else, and someone will always have a different opinion, and that's cool. Sure. That's the conversations we should be having.
Oh,
but Friday the 13th is the one that codified it, though. Like, there was no turning back.
No,
after Friday.
No. A lot of movies copied Friday the 13th.
A lot of films are still copying Friday the 13th.
Oh yeah, they are, and even fan-made films are copying as well. Some really good ones out there, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, is Friday your favorite franchise then, of the long-running big franchises?
In the slasher genre, it would be. All together, out of the big ones, let's see. We have a lot of little ones like Army of Darkness, Evil Dead. Those ones are some of my favorites. I would have to say the biggest one would be Friday.
Yeah, mine too. When I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends. I grew up fairly rural here in Jersey, and I was a different sort of kid, as you probably can tell. I wasn't exactly picked first on any sports teams, but every summer I had one friend I could count on. He came to the theater every year, pretty much. And if he didn't come to the theater, he came to the television screen. So I know it sounds very odd that to have Jason Voorhees as the stabilizing force for a young man, but he was.
Oh.
And I think for a lot of people that had the Star Wars bug, or maybe the Star Trek bug, or whatever it was, I didn't have that. That never affected me. But there was something about the Friday franchise. And I understand from the outside, no one gets it. Like, the non-horror fan will never understand.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's fine, because we've found our place. The horror community online, especially now, because the conventions, as we discussed, have changed fundamentally.
Oh, yeah.
It's really interesting. Like, your channel has your definite devoted following. And that's not to say they are just yours. I'm sure they have other channels that they follow as well. And I think that mixing is an extremely healthy thing for the genre. Do you see a day where the fans will be able to take the genre back, for lack of a better word, and really influence the direction of the future?
So. I think people like us are trying to bring that out there. On my coffee show that I do on Sundays I have interviews with independent film creators and actresses and trying to get the word out there about those. They cater more to the fans than something like Friday the 13th. They don't cater to anybody. And which is it's a shame, but you've got the smaller people like Todd Jenkins and Victor DeSanti, who did Never Hike Alone. I bring them on and I talk to them and introduce people to indie horror. Some of them don't even realize that there is independent films in the horror industry, and then they fall in love with that. So if the more we can get out there how important independent filmmakers are and how well they actually talk to their friends, their followers of the genre, I think fans can take it back. I think if we start coming together and bringing more awareness to it, I think so. I think the fans could take back the horror genre.
We can only hope. So, how does your family take to this horror culture obsession?
Oh, they're fine with it. My spawns are horror fans. My youngest one is more of a horror fan than my eldest. And my husband, if you can see my background, he feeds me horror on a regular basis. This is just a very small portion of my collection. I've been collecting for over 20 years.
That's very cool.
They support me 100%. And they support the genre. He's not a huge horror fan. I did not marry someone who loves horror.
It's practically a religion, so that's good. You're a mixed religion family, so that's good.
Yeah.
I'm agnostic in most things, if not outright atheist. But when it comes to horror, that is my. There is an altar in the house. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, what titles are currently just those titles that you can't stop talking about, that excite you right now?
For movies?
For anything.
Oh, Made of Scare, which is a video game, is coming up in October. I talk about that one quite a bit on my coffee show. We've been following it because it looks really good. Candyman. I am.
Be careful with that.
Yeah, my fingers are crossed that it's going to be good. But we do have a lot of different discussions about Candyman here and there. Yeah, won't go too much into that one. But yeah, we have. And
yeah. Anything else? Did you get a chance? Up by you, do you have drive-in theaters near you?
No, we don't. We do. We have spoke about a couple of the drive-in. Evil Dead is Bruce Campbell is also doing their drive-in around the United States. It's really cool.
Over the last few weeks, I've been going to the drive-in because there are no regular theaters still operating. And honestly, I was just jonesing. I had to get out. And mostly it's family fare that's out there, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Ghostbusters and that sort of thing, which, I like, but, if it was a different time, I would not be going to see them. But there was a new first-run horror film from Australia last week on the big screen called Relic.
Oh, yeah, Relic.
It is this year's Hereditary. It is an important, cool, serious, innovative horror film. So if you don't have that on your radar, people, you need to get it on your radar immediately. I will warn you, though, the one thing, and it's not the greatest thing for me to say, because I just told you to go search it out, but the drive-in might not be the best place to watch it, because I had a particularly bright evening with a nice full moon out there, or close to a full moon anyway, and it's a darker film. So unfortunately, I think it would be better in a conventional theater.
Yeah.
But it's such a great film. Do not sleep on it. Do not wait for home video. Let's make a point. Like, it was the #1 film for last week. I mean, given what's going on, that might not sound that impressive, but the truth is, we need to support this stuff as we get it back in dribs and drabs.
Yeah, we do. There is a movie that we have been discussing, and it is it's a Brazilian film called Skull. Skull. And hold on, let me just see if I can get you. It's not out. It's called Skull the Mask. It's not out yet on Blu-ray or DVDs. They're still trying to find a backer, a publication to do that for them. It's really good. It's the little bits that I got to see of it, as I haven't seen the whole film, obviously, because it's not out yet for VOD. Well, it should be out soon, but it looks really good. We've been talking about it over the last few months, and it's a Brazilian made, so it's going to be gory. It's outside of North America, so you're going to be able, if you're a gore horror like myself, you're going to enjoy that. But yeah, that's another film that we've been discussing.
The last film out of Brazil I saw was The Black Woods, and it was a slow burn, definitely, but I love slow burns. I love just marinating in worlds. And so I'll definitely keep my eyes out for a Skull. Definitely. I'm going to make a note for myself.
Skull the Mask.
Skull the Mask.
Yep.
So have you seen Boot Part 1, The Haunted Ship?
No.
Oh my God. So great. Again, I hate to talk about films from outside our borders, but again, India, Turkey, and Indonesia are the 3 hotspots on the globe right now that are just producing amazing work. And Boot Part 1 is just such a great take on
I have to see if I could get that.
The haunted house / possession thriller. But it's really a film about grief, which I love, and it's not a sentimental film about grief, which is fascinating.
Right. And you said it's called Boot?
Boot, BHOOT. Now beware, there's older films called Boot, because it simply means it just means
I see it here.
Evil spirit. But Boot Part 1, The Haunted Ship.
I'll have to take a look if I get that here in Canada. I know our Netflix has a few Indian or Hindi made films.
If not, reach out to me. I'll find a way.
Sounds
definitely. Have you checked out anything from Turkey?
No, I have not. I can actually say no.
The Section films are just so freaking over. If you like Evil Dead, imagine Evil Dead on steroids.
Interesting.
Oh, I mean, the series just concluded with the 6th chapter. The 6th chapter is like nonstop assault on your senses from the word go to the closing credits.
What's
2
it
hours
called?
later. Section. It's SICCIN. Hey, do you want to do a little experiment? You're online right now?
Yeah, I just typed it in, Sisson.
I would love to see your reaction to the Section 6 trailer. Just turn the volume down so we don't have any copyright claims on us. You have earphones in, right?
Uh-huh.
Could we see you react to it?
You shouldn't be able to hear it, but hold on. Let me see what this actually brought my mic into. I don't know what it brought my mic in. Maybe my system sounds. So I can mute my system sounds if it comes through. Just let me know if you hear it.
Because I think you'll get a pleasant surprise about the
future.
Do you hear
that?
No.
All right, then we're good.
Everyone, if you want to play along in the chat, just go to YouTube and hit Section 6 trailer.
Yeah, CICCIN, right? I'm on a Sisson official trailer. It's only like about 1 minute and 23 seconds.
Yep, that's Section 6, right?
Is this in 6?
Yeah, it's the 6th film's trailer I want you to watch.
This,
Most people don't realize that the most extreme horror films being made are being made in Turkey right now. It's insane.
no, that's a reaction film. Let me see if this is the trailer. Some things are not in my country that I won't be able to see. So let me see if this is an actual trailer and not a reaction video.
Okay.
Does it start with like a building with fire?
With fire and 4 figures and windows? Yes.
All right. That looks good.
So it is 2 hours of that type of imagery nonstop. It is relentless.
It's brought a little bit of everything in it. There's a little bit of everything in it. There's an Argentinian film that's coming out that is very Evil Dead-esque. It looks really good.
So the director, Albert Metzi, is one of my absolute favorites. And people, if you reach out to him, he will respond to you. He doesn't speak a lot of English, but he will respond to you.
Interesting. That's nice to know.
He's one of the biggest names in Turkish horror. He basically jump-started, because Turkish horror used to be a joke. They used to just kind of rip off American films badly. And he just said, nope, I'm going to make a little film that's going to change everything. And now the entire industry can stand up and fight with anything out there.
Yeah, that looks good.
So
I like it.
Yeah, you should definitely check it all out.
I will see if I can find it.
Again, reach out to me. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So what are your desert island films? If you could only take 3 films to a desert island with the equipment to play them.
I would definitely need a Blu-ray player and a television, but
Exactly. It's a very well-equipped desert island.
3 movies that I would take with me would be Night of the Living Dead from 1968.
Thank you.
That is one of my all-time favorites. Reanimator from 1985. Obviously my name, right? And I would have to say Friday the 13th Part 3. Even though I really, really love the Army of Darkness and Evil Dead, and I've seen Army of Darkness, I would say about 100,000 times. But those 3, I think, would be my.
Very cool. I'm not the biggest fan of Reanimator. I actually like the sequel more. I think
really, Reanimator's Bride or Beyond Reanimator?
No one ever said Beyond Reanimator as their favorite of that franchise.
I know.
I love Bride of Reanimator. I think it has a really healthy sense of humor. It's different than the original in that it.
Oh yes.
It definitely is a lot more playful and wants to stretch its legs. It almost has an Evil Dead 2 feel to it. Which I
1985, and then what? Bride was in the 90s. I don't remember when Bride was out.
I think it's like 89, but it's not like the next year. And then Beyond came out, and we all looked at the screen and went, "What are we watching?
Yeah.
What is this?"
I love Jeffrey Combs, but it got a little out of control.
It was made for a price tag. That's what it comes down to.
I mean, you have to see it. If you've never seen it, you do have to at least see it once so you know what we're talking about and be like, oh, okay.
So is Friday 3 your favorite of the franchise then?
No, I just like that one because it's where Jason first gets his mask. And it's one of my favorite masks besides the Chrome Skull one from Jason X, which that one's really cool.
Yeah, I'm a 1-4-X guy that in order for that franchise. I'm not going to ask the question. Everyone in the chat knows which question I'm not going to ask. So, no. So, Reanimator was one of those projects that kind of defined H.P. Lovecraft for the film world but it's a really poor example of his fiction, actually.
Yeah, it's because it's loosely Reanimator's loosely based off of,
Yeah.
right? Loosely as the word.
Yeah, but it's really interesting how it brought Lovecraft into the stratosphere as far as horror fans. It was always a very niche thing that you found someone who'd read Lovecraft. There'd been film adaptations before, whether Die Monster Die with Karloff, whether, or there'd been a handful. Even The Haunted Palace with Vincent Price is adaptation of the case of Charles Dexter Ward. But really, it was Reanimator that made putting Lovecraft's name above the title a thing.
Yep.
Lovecraft has never really been able to escape it since.
No.
And I both love and hate that, because on one hand, it gave Lovecraft a second life, but on the other hand, it tied him to something that he's not. And I can like the films. That's not a problem. Yeah. But I would love to see a real adaptation of one of his works.
Yeah, a lot of them are loosely based off his stories and stuff, right? So, but that is where, instead of remaking all of these films, start pulling some Lovecraftian stuff. Like, they're adaptating shit tons of King movies, books, novels, right into movies. Why can't we do that a little bit more with Lovecraft? And there's many other authors out there, so stop remaking friggin' movies.
Now you're singing my song. There's way too many great novels that have not been adapted. And there was a time when they were getting adapted, by the way. When Peter Straub's Ghost Story was turned into one of the great horror releases of 1980. Why have we not seen another Straub adaptation since? Where's the Coco adaptation, or where's the? It's just bizarre to me. And Straub's an easy example, but people like Brian Hodge and Kathy Koja have not been adapted. Both those I had them on the show, and I didn't ask that question, but there's plenty of talent out there. Dan Simmons got the television series The Terror. Finally, he got adapted, but the man has 26 novels, and we bothered to.
There's so much to pull from. But we keep remaking the same stuff over and over. How many remakes do we really need of Child's Play? Like, how many? We don't. How many remakes of Friday the 13th? How many remakes of friggin' Nightmare on Elm Street? We don't. Bring us something new.
We're getting a fourth adaptation of Carrie, so there you go.
Yeah, I know. And they're looking at remaking Wolfman. I'm so disgusted with that, but won't talk about that either.
No. And that's something we talk about a lot on this channel, is that we're all for, retiring our favorite longtime franchises.
Don't kill it.
And just give us new. Give us exciting and new.
Yeah. How many people don't read novels, right? That would love some of these. I don't read a lot of novels. I don't got time to sit down and read a book. But I'm sure there's some amazing horror, thriller, psychological novels that would be great movies. Would probably be pretty good to bring light to that, as they do with Stephen King.
Yeah, listen, someone like Elizabeth Massey, you go into her catalog, I guarantee you will have, it'll work both ways. You'll have new people come to horror that just find these great new titles, and those people who see the film might, who knows, pick up the book. So it seems like a zero loss game to me, but the industry is set up completely opposite that. It's, what do we have that its name recognition is instantaneous? What can we put on a blurb? We don't want to use more than 10 words to describe what it is, and for people to know what it is and buy their ticket. Well, you know what? If we do that, we're just getting the same crap over and over. And no one needs another Fog remake situation, whereas you have one of the most insulting films ever made simply trying to cash in on a name.
And that's it. And a lot of these remakes, that's what it is. They don't really care about the storyline. They don't really care about that, and they kill it. I'm very worried that the horror genre is going to turn into the action hero genre. Marvel is murdering, and DC are murdering their things by keep dragging it. How many Spider-Mans do we honestly need? Like, we know he has a spider hand, webs that come out and shit. Why do we need to have 10, 20, 30 films of that? I don't quite understand.
Well, because, in the 80s, we had hard action films, whether you're talking about
Oh
the
yeah,
Rambo series or that all got replaced by family-friendly action films in the form of the superhero thing. But that's kind of what's happened to the horror genre too. When's the last time you saw something on a theater screen in the horror genre that we went, wow, I can't believe they went that far?
hmm
Doesn't it happens on your small screen at home
yeah.
with
And I'm
smaller
hoping
independent
that
or
the
foreign
horror
titles?
genre doesn't turn into that. I'm like, because they're constantly making remakes of movies that don't need remakes.
Mhm.
Friday the 13th never needed a 2009 remake. It never needed it. Halloween, we didn't need a reimagining either. Carrie, but we don't need 5 million Carrie movies. One was good. One was good. We don't need a remake. Uh,
Especially think like you got Brian De Palma to adapt Stephen King. Who wants to do that again after that? Really, I mean, what are you going to gain? It's stupid. It's really stupid. King has been adapted by by De Palma, by Kubrick, by
yep.
Carpenter, by Cronenberg. Do we really want to step on the heels and the toes of these giants? You're not going to do better. Go to new projects that you can make your own. Then you have a
Yeah.
fighting chance. But between the remakes and the never-ending Bloomhouse, um, just cash in off of jump scares,
Yep.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say anymore. I'm frustrated with the domestic scene like you wouldn't believe. And I mean, it's not domestic to you, but it probably feels somewhat domestic to you. I'm just aggravated. And when I talk to some fans, they get annoyed at me for talking about foreign films as much as I do, or very independent films. But I feel like that's where my love has gone. I've followed the films. The films didn't follow me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do we have any questions out in the chat? I'll go through and make sure I didn't mix anything because I'm sure I did because I really wasn't watching it very closely. But if you have any questions, let's get them in. We've been running for about an hour. So
Have you seen a film called Cherokee Creek?
Cherokee Creek. No, I've not.
You like raunchy B grade horror films?
Many times, yes.
Okay, go and check it out. I've seen it 4 times. Like I said, I really love independent filmmakers, and I talk to many of them on a regular basis coming on my show. And Cherokee Creek, I watched that movie before I ever reached out to the director, and that movie made me want to reach out to the director. When I say raunchy, I mean raunchy.
Okay. So Jamie asks, favorite final girl in a horror movie?
Ellen Ripley.
From the original.
Sci-fi. I was sci-fi horror would be Ripley.
That's fair. I consider the original film just to be an outright horror film. I don't consider it sci-fi in any real substantive way.
Some people are like, well, she's not horror. And I'm like, yeah, it is. But so that's why I say sci-fi, and I actually put a genre to it because I have argued with many people because they are like, well, it's this. And I'm like, no, it's a horror film. It's anything that's disgust, grotesque, shocking, and makes you unsettled and disturbed is a horror film. That's the definition of horror.
So I open every single one of my videos with a definition of horror for exactly this reason. And I'm going to read it to you for a second. See if you agree. Maybe if I can find it. It is... There we go. It's funny that I'm so worried about getting it right. Like I didn't write it. It reads, horror, a genre of the dramatic arts that seeks to elicit a response from within an array of dark emotions. Fear, anxiety, disgust, paranoia, terror, stress, gallows humor, etc. And the reason I have to open every single video with that is that people seem to think that something like Jaws is not a horror film for some reason. And yet Jaws uses the word terror twice on its poster. Science fiction is a genre based around a setting.
Yep.
It's futurist. That's what it is. And yes, Alien takes place in a future. However, its intent is not to say anything about the future. Its intent is to terrify. So it fits wildly in the horror box, and it kind of, sort of, if you squint, works as science fiction. So to me, that's not even a question. So Ellen Ripley, as long as we're talking about the original film or the third film,
The original film.
You're in good shape with me, because the definition isn't reinforces you. So
she didn't need to rely on a man. She worked on a man's crew. She made a stand for who she was, and she's just a very well-rounded, strong female lead that kicks ass. And horror has always had a strong female, but she's always had to rely on something, and she's stumbling down all the time, and she cuts her finger, and those are the ditzy final girls. Ripley is not a ditzy final girl. She is a strong final girl, just like Nancy. Oh, sorry, that's my swan. Yeah.
Now, in fact, Ripley, if they would have just listened to Ripley and not let the contaminated astronaut back into the ship, they would never have had any of these problems. My favorite final girls are on screen right now, so it's not tough to figure out. Swapna and Ginny. Well, Swapna and Ginny, in that order. I actually put Swapna slightly ahead, so you could tell.
Yeah.
And this is my umpteenth sales pitch on Game Over to everyone out there. But what you can't see in this picture is the reason that Swapna is in a wheelchair is because she has broken both of her legs. So go up against your mad slasher with both your legs broken, and then we'll talk.
Oh yeah. Always, yeah.
On a similar note, DJ Donnelly asks, do you think there should be more final guys?
Well, I don't think there is many final guy movies, right? I'm trying to think of some of my favorites. Night of the Living Dead had one, but they accidentally shot him in the head. There should be. Why not? I can't remember. There's some, right? But not a lot, as we have in a majority of horror films is a female final. I can't say why not. Night at Elm Street too. Yeah, but not as many. There's not as many male finals as there are females. And like I said, I really can't think of any that come straight off my head for males. So I would say, yeah, if there's not enough, we should definitely make more.
And just
not remakes, please.
The writer in me is just going to freak out at the question and say, whatever works for the story is what we should do. We should not actually try to artificially make anything. Yep. So, for instance, yes, it was a trope. It was a trope.
Was male.
That's right. Well, they wrote all the roles intentionally to be gender neutral, and they just figured it out. And the same thing with Night of the Living Dead. The role was not written specifically for a black man. There was no reference in the film whatsoever. It was just the best actor who came along. Now, do I think that Romero probably was trying to have it both ways with that? After they cast it, did he probably think, wait, you know what I'm saying now? Yeah, I think so. But that's okay. The process was right. So whatever works best for the story. I don't really have... I will tell you what offends me more. And I'm going to pick on a film from the Friday the 13th franchise for a second and understand it's all with love. Choose any character from Friday the 13th Part 8 besides Rennie, and I want that person to survive instead of her.
Yeah.
So to me, and that's not a small matter of why I put that film pretty close to the bottom of my listing there of that franchise. But I just want to see good stories with compelling characters, and I don't want anyone to be safe. You know, it used to be a trope that the black guy dies first, right? And then we got that. Now we've gotten so oversensitive about that if the black guy dies at all, he has to sacrifice himself to save someone. It has to be a very noble death, and that's setting up a new trope. So let's just stop with the tropes. No one's safe, no agendas, and if you realize that something's been done a lot, don't do that thing.
Charlie's Farm. I don't want to spoil it for anybody if no one's seen this film before. Charlie's Farm was it's an Australian-made film, 2014. I would highly suggest it, and I'm not going to say anything any more about it. But I love horror films where nobody survives. I love Friday the 13th is great because the slashing and the murders and stuff like that. But there's always somebody alive. And then usually that person doesn't move into the next scene. Only time that's really happened is Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street. And then you have that in Halloween with Laurie Strode. In the Jason series, you had that, what, Alice?
Yeah.
And she died in the beginning of the second, right? And then you have Ginny, but Jenny never was seen again. Neither was Paul.
So in Friday 4, it's supposed to, when they were going through the hospital, that's supposed to be her. That's supposed to be Survivor, the third film, that's facing the opposite way, hugging some woman. But it's like, it's an afterthought type thing.
Yeah. She actually didn't want to do, her manager told her not to do anymore.
Well, no.
And she kicked herself in the ass for ignoring her manager. She didn't ignore. She actually went along with it and was like, yeah. And she kicked herself in the ass when they came out with sequels.
Well, a lot of that can be true said of a lot of people. Kane Hodder is the only one who ever realized that there was something to it.
Potential. Yeah.
Everyone else just kind of saw it as a job. And that's why I say if any franchise should not have revolutionized horror, it should have. Friday had everything stacked against it, but somehow it did it.
That it did.
I'm just gonna take a moment to answer Jess because he's asking a question specifically to me, but you can chime in, not a problem. I know you like classic 30s, 40s horror, more 30s than 40s. So would the Universal Monsters be another one of your favorite horror series? If so, what are your favorites of those? Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, etc. So I'm going to have to dissect your question for a second here. I don't consider the Universal cycle to be a proper franchise. Yes, there's crossover films late in the cycle, but again, I'm more of a 30s than 40s guy. Bride of Frankenstein is my... Sorry?
Did Hammer Films.
That's a whole different kettle of fish for me. But I would say that the Frankenstein series from Universal would be my favorite. I know I'm supposed to answer Creature from the Black Lagoon because that's everyone's answer, but honestly, only the first film is really awesome. The other two are okay-ish. But, and some of you know this, in the 1940s, starting in 1945, there was a franchise called Captive Wild Woman and its two sequels. And I'm actually a huge fan of those wonderfully tacky B movies because at that point, at least those films were doing something new and exciting where they weren't running on fumes like the 30s franchises were. So I hope that answers your question. Have you seen Captive Wild Woman, Bree?
No.
Oh God, I gotta hook you up with that. Actually, you can probably find it on YouTube in its entirety. It's only an hour.
A lot of the older films you can find online. They're not overly hard. Sometimes I'll find it on YouTube and then they'll say this movie is not allowed in your region. And then I'm just like, okay, whatever. And move on.
Or for $3 a month, get a VPN and watch everything.
Yeah, it works. VPNs work on some, but not everything. It doesn't work on Shudder. It doesn't work on Amazon Prime. It works on Netflix.
Wow, really? It doesn't work on Shudder?
Yeah, trust me, I tried. American Shudder is way better than the Canadian Shudder. We don't even get Hulu here, so.
Well, I don't know if Hulu is even going to be around for that much longer. So
yeah, they had some shows on it that I'd like to catch, but and I honestly can't remember which ones. But yeah, I've tried Shudder. I can't seem to get it to work with a VPN. Amazon, I can't get it to work with a VPN, but Netflix and little things like that, I can easily do. That's not a problem.
So this is a comment, but I'm going to put this out there for you anyway. Rob Zombie should never have touched Halloween.
Briggs. I love what Zombie did with Halloween. I know a lot of people are going to agree with me on it, but I enjoyed his films for Halloween. And it's just like with Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Nobody seems to like it, but I friggin' love it. It's a great friggin' film.
Oh, no, Halloween 3 has come a long way in the fan opinion. There's a lot of fans out there now, but it's a separate thing. Just like the Jason X fandom is separate from the Friday
and it's
fandom.
Separate, yeah.
Halloween, the Season of the Witch is definitely a separate fandom. I can't agree with you about Rob Zombie's.
I like his thought process on things.
Oh, you see, that's my biggest problem, I think, with them.
Yeah. See, I liked his view. I liked how he made Michael more vicious. Michael in Halloween was very, he wasn't as vicious. Like it for me and my buddy Serial, we go through this back and forth because he's a Halloween Michael fan and I'm a Friday fan. And for me, the more violent and ragey the killer is better for me. I love gore. I love the violence. It's a lot of fun to see blood splatter everywhere. Where Michael didn't give me that. Michael did some good murders, don't get me wrong. But when Rob Zombie did it, I really liked his visuals. I really loved his visuals on how he did.
I just have I have a basic rule with these type of characters, which is that don't give me the backstory, because they lose all their power for me as a viewer.
Oh yeah, backstories in horror movies, and that's why we have our horror movie logic, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, well, they're descendants of urban legends and campfire stories at their core.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween is a direct reference to The Man Upstairs, the same story that became When a Stranger Calls. They're based on the same urban myth. So to me, those stories work great in isolation, but if you start to dissect them, they work less well. And so when you give a character like Michael Myers a backstory, you're asking for problems. And there is something about the fact that his first victim should be his sister.
Oh yeah, it should. Well, that's how it was.
Shouldn't be some random kid in the woods that he didn't like. I mean,
no.
So
that is also where I dislike 2018 Halloween. Michael's never killed a kid before, and he kills his first child.
And if you're going to go down that road, then you can't play it safe with the baby later. You can't.
No.
You see, that's that they do. They move the goalpost, but wouldn't move it all the way. So why put the scene with the baby in the crib there? Oh, because they knew the audience would gasp. And that's a bad reason to do things. That's the jump scare. It's the same mentality that gives us a jump scare. So yeah, no, Halloween 2018 is not the worst of its series, but what it is an abstract failure. It just misses the point so consistently. And I'm not even talking about the Sartain problem. Dr. Sartain is an idiotic problem that grew out of reshoots because they screwed up the movie to begin with. The movie just fundamentally misses the point everywhere. I don't have a lot nice to say. And I used to be in the minority. When that movie first came out, I was not the lone voice in my circle, but I was close to it.
Yeah.
And it's funny how people have evolved on the film, and now it's a very mixed reception. I would say it's mixed negative now.
I find a lot of people, when I say, oh, Halloween 2018, they're like, oh, it's a great film. And I'm like, what were you watching? I mean, I liked some of the stuff that they had in it. I like that homage to Donald Pleasance. I like some of the stuff that was in there, but I didn't care for it. We even seen it open at night because I had really high hopes for it, right? And well, that was like fucking stabbed.
So I made the mistake of 2 weeks earlier going to see Hellfest on its opening night, which is right behind me.
Yeah.
And Hellfest I knew nothing about and blew me away. I was just blown the way.
I like Hellfest.
It was everything I want in a slasher film. Everything I want in a slasher film. And I felt like those characters felt like horror fans, like the real, they felt like the real deal. The kind of people who'd go to a haunted attraction. The haunted attraction felt real. It felt like the Halloween season. So immediately you're just stroking every good place on me. I'm feeling all the right vibes. But then the movie actually pulled itself off, which doesn't happen so often with Hollywood films anymore.
It's a decent film. It's a good one.
So then 2 weeks later, going to see Halloween 2018, I went in with a certain expectation. And oh my God, from pretty much the first frame, it started disappointing me. And it just didn't stop.
The diehard fans of Halloween are the ones that don't really actually like the film at all. You've got the ones that are just introduced to the Halloween franchise and they love it. And which I guess to each their own. But I did. Right. I went. Me and my spawn. She was 15 at the time. No, 14 at the time. And we both went into with a certain expectation because she's my horror movie buddy. And we went in with a certain expectation and we both looked at each other and in the movie theater and we're just like, oh, we should have waited till it came out on VOD.
So if you like the homage to Donald Pleasance in Halloween 2018, get ready for a deep fake Donald Pleasance in Kills.
Nope. Nope. I
Oh,
burned the movie.
it's there.
I heard about that. I was hoping it was just a rumor.
Nope, it's there. It's there.
Mm.
So don't worry though. They have a whole year to re-edit the film 6 times, like they do to every Halloween film, until it's an incomprehensible mess. So, I don't know. We're saying a lot of Halloween reactions. You see, Halloween is one of those titles that derails any conversation permanently.
It does.
Oh,
it
there
does.
we go. James Frost asks Lauren and Reanimate Her, what is your favorite Alfred Hitchcock film?
Oh, there's many. If I was to have to pick one out of it, I'm gonna have to say Psycho. I really like The Birds though. Vertigo wasn't bad either. I'm gonna have to say Psycho.
I love Psycho. Rope is actually my favorite Hitchcock film because it has the most sadistic sense of humor that Hitchcock ever actually got on screen. It's the most like watching his introductions to his television show play out as a feature film. I do love North by Northwest. I like the 39 Steps quite a lot, though it's not a film that you watch a lot. But I would say Lifeboat might actually be, on a good day, my favorite too. Depends on how recently I've watched it. I don't know if you've ever seen Lifeboat. It's about a pleasure liner that got sunk by German subs, and it's the survivors on a lifeboat. And all it is them adrift, and the internal politics of who should lead the group, whose ideas they should follow, start to take over. And maybe there's a Nazi on the boat. And I'll leave it there. But it's amazing. It's a one set movie, basically. And it's really underrated, and I think should be always mentioned in the top 10 Hitchcock films.
Yeah, Hitchcock. There's a great documentary on Hitchcock as well. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called Hitchcock. It's really good film. Really good documentary on it.
My good friend Christian Hannah Horror says, God damn it, Lauren, with all the spoilers. I'm not spoiling anything important. If you want me to spoil something, I'll text you the entire plot later, if that's what you'd like. Have you ever seen Christian's channel? Christian is an extremely active member of the community. He's also a musician. He does all of his own music for the channel. I do too, but I'm a shitty guitarist, and he's an awesome guitarist, and he can sing, and I cannot. And I am smart enough not to try and sing though. But no, he has a lot of great. He has a lot of great content, and you should definitely check him out. And everyone out there should also check him out because he's too shy to actually, pimp himself in the chat. That was my hint that he should do it.
Yeah, I'll go check him out.
Is this Matt one of yours or one of mine? The Fog and They Live were better than Halloween.
Love They Live.
I love The Fog.
The Fog is a great film too. They're awesome movies. The Thing, like, I don't.
Yeah, early Carpy's hard to go wrong with, isn't he?
Yeah, like seriously, I got my husband into watching some of the older Carpenter films, and he actually enjoys them. They Live is awesome.
It is. I at this point, I think The Fog is probably the Carpenter film I watch the most, though. I love the atmosphere. I'm an atmosphere guy. I'm an emotional viewer. If a film makes me feel something I don't feel any other time, then it's just won me over. And of his work, The Fog gets me.
Yeah, The Fog's a good film. Again, they didn't need a remake. I know.
So James Frost actually reverses the question sort and says, what is our least favorite John Carpenter film? Let's make this fair. Let's remove Ghosts of Mars from the answer. You can't say Ghosts of Mars because it's too easy.
I actually liked Ghost of Mars.
So you're the one.
Yeah, I like Ghost of Mars. I thought it was good. I guess it's not everyone's cup of tea. I like Frankenhooker as well, and not many people like Frankenhooker.
Well, in your Hen and Lauder, I'll always be a brain damage guy, but I like it. I like
brain damage is definitely good. My least. Let's think.
Ooh, Borderline 11. That's actually a great answer to this question.
Wait,
It's
what
not
was? No, Ghost. My least favorite. This is something I don't get asked. That's a good question.
Elvis the motion picture.
What was that?
Elvis the motion
Elvis?
picture.
I don't think I even seen that.
Kurt Russell's great in it. Everything else about the movie is like, oh my god, what am I watching?
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Oh, don't go everywhere.
Maybe Memories of the Invisible Man. Memoirs of the Invisible Man. I don't think there's really any one of that I actually didn't like. But mind you, I probably didn't see every single Carpenter film because that Elvis one I didn't even know about.
We're getting a lot of reaction from what other people's least favorite is. We got Little China. Escape from LA was Matt's least favorite. That's a good call. That film's kind of a mess. Christian Hanna, man, says Christine. I don't think Christine's anything real special, but I don't think it's his worst. Big Trouble. Jamie has Big Trouble in Little China and Vampires.
Okay, Vampires was all right, and it was not my least favorite. I really love Big Trouble in Little China. Love Kurt Russell. I love that movie. I can watch that. I think I've watched that movie every month, at least twice a month. That and The Thing.
I think that Vampires is the kind of film that Sheryl Lee Neged can't save.
Yeah,
and that says something.
It's not horrible.
It may be the worst edited film I've ever seen, though.
Yeah, it has a little bit of lack of the luster there. Yeah, I can see that being people's least favorite for sure. I agree.
Right, looks like we've gone through the questions. Gibbs reaches in and says, "Village of the Damned is just all right." I gotta stop you there, sir, because here's my Village of the Damned thing. I love the original film, but I really, really love its sequel, Children of the Damned. That is, my God, a great film. And when Carpenter made his film, he kind of adapted both, kind of half-assedly. So it's a film that's frustrating because I like parts of Carpenter's film, but it doesn't really touch its source material properly. So, but if you haven't seen Children of the Damned, please see Children of the Damned.
It's a good film.
It's awesome. And James Frost comes in and says, The Ward is my least favorite Carpenter film. That's probably because you can't tell it's a Carpenter film in any way, shape, or form.
The Ward. He's got so many films. Like he's not like a 10-film director. He's got hundreds. So it's really hard to go through and think of every one of his films.
Yeah. No, the Ward is just one of those films I think we all went in like wanting to like, but halfway through we all start to go, it's okay, and I should never feel okay about a Carpenter film. So we do have a question coming in from Jess Graham. What are your thoughts on the Hammer horrors of the 50s?
Yeah, you like don't. I would like to hear your thought on that.
Well, no, you go first. You're the guest.
I like Hammer films. I do. I like Hammer films. I wasn't sure by your look and the way you said it whether or not you like it or you're just like no.
No, it's just a long conversation. It was longer than I probably want to.
Yeah. You can really get into Hammer and Universal, all of that.
Yeah, I can lose myself and I can monopolize a conversation. But here's my short side of it. I'm actually a bigger fan of the late period Hammer films. So I'm a big Karnstein trilogy guy. So give me Lust for a Vampire or Twins of Evil any day of the week. Over Dracula, Prince of Darkness, or Evil Frankenstein. I like those films, and I certainly grew up with them. But for my taste today, the later Hammer stuff is far more interesting when they were a little bit more desperate to remain relevant. Now, I will say, the company's come back in a big way. The Lodge this year is one of the very best horror films in many years. A very different sort of thing for them to be doing than what they're known for back in their heyday. But nothing but respect for Hammer. I just have an unpopular opinion of what the best is. So
I mean, they have some really. I like Let Me In. That was cute. I use the word cute because it's cute. It's a cute movie.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
it's not let the right one in though. It just isn't.
No.
Okay, James Frost is going to start trouble.
Oh,
Least favorite Wes Craven film. Mine is Soul to Take. That's almost too easy an answer, sir.
Yeah, that one is not a great one.
You see that?
Let's see.
I'm just not a big Wes Craven fan, so this is kind of a deep list for me.
Oh, really? You don't like Craven much?
I think he has high points. I think Last House, Hills Have Eyes, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which is the only film in that franchise I like.
Only the original. You don't like Dream Warriors. You don't think Dream Warriors is good at all?
No. Well, here's the thing. Dream Warriors starts the ball rolling on that franchise turning into just dumb stoner comedy. And even when I first saw it, I was like, ooh, this is a bad look for this movie. And sure enough, I prefer... Listen, Freddy is, to me, when I saw the first two films on the same night, originally, was this terrifying figure. And although there's kind of one-liners in the second film, they're not funny one-liners. But by the time we get to Welcome to Prime Time, bitch, I'm feeling all the wrong things for that franchise.
Yeah.
I'm not a big comedy fan. You don't know this about me, but I don't like very many comedies at all.
Oh, really?
So the fact that the franchise went comedy really didn't sit well with me. So no, I love the first film. I respect a lot of the second film, though I wouldn't say I would ever be a fan of it. But that's it. The rest of them, I could, if they didn't exist, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. But I'm glad they do because so many people love them.
I have to say, my least favorite. I don't really care for the Scream franchise much. I like the first one. The Scream franchise, I could have done without the rest of them. Red Eye wasn't that great for me either. But yeah, I know that's not a popular opinion. Everyone's like, oh, it's 90s horror, Scream.
Nope, you're dead on to me. I don't like the Scream sequels at all. I think the original film is okay, but it's aged poorly in my opinion.
I think the original is good. It had some stuff in it that made it set out from like I Know What You Did Last Summer and that crap. They're making what, a number 5 in Scream?
The only thing that's good there is it's the Radio Silence guys, the guys who made Ready or Not are making it. That's the only reason I'm holding out hope because I love Ready or Not. But I don't know.
It's not a bad film.
I love it. But I'm expecting to be disappointed just because that franchise is what that franchise is. Yeah. But Craven, to be honest with you, I mean, oh God. Deadly Friend is awful. I think Shocker is awful. I know people love it.
I like Shocker.
Awful. Serpent and the Rainbow is great. You know, that was the one in that time period that's actually really great.
Yeah, that's a really good film.
Vampire in Brooklyn. That thing's a piece of shit.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, there's like when you really look at Craven's career, he has these high points that are just unbelievably high, and then there's the rest of it. To me, anyway.
Yeah, there's some that aren't the greatest, and then there's others that are really good. Definitely are the minority.
I would not watch Scream ever again. I will probably see the original film again at some point, but I'm not going to race to do it. I'll never see the sequels again. Won't happen. Yeah, no, I have no interest. The Scream itself, I've seen it enough. I don't really need to see it ever again. I know it is. Never will watch the rest of them either. I'll watch number 5 when it comes out on VOD because you have to see it. You have to see it, kind of thing. Okay, so Steak Sauce, who is a fellow New Jerseyan, is trying to bait me here. He says, I think the Elm Street franchise kicks the shit out of Friday the 13th. I definitely know I'm in the minorities in these parts. Piz will probably disown me now. Yes, the great Pizzowell will definitely disown you because he might feel slightly stronger about Nightmare 2, but I think it's one of those rare cases that he and I are pretty close in opinion. Now, Matt is trying to piss us all off. Night of the Creeps was overrated. Dude, you're not going to find any support here. Fred Decker made 2 brilliant films back to back And then he, tried to destroy the RoboCop series. But the truth is, you can't. Creeps is just pretty great. If you have a love for 50s monster movies, there's no way not to love the film. And he follows that up by saying Night of the Demons is way better than Night of the Creeps. Dude, are you on any substances that are affecting you? Do you need to lie down for a while? I'm kidding. I love that you have an opinion. Unpopular opinion is what I love the most about us. It is. I mean, if you don't like Night of the Creeps, that's cool, because that's one more voice that can actually have a conversation. If we all just talk about the shit we love all day long, and there's plenty of channels that do that, by the way, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
It's boring.
Yeah, see, and I like having conversations. We have our Regal is a really good friend of mine. She's in here. She's a newbie to horror. So it's really nice getting her into some of the classics, getting her into some of the new ones, and then hearing her outlook. She's also a lot younger than I am. So I like getting her input on horror films that I seem to love, and she'll be like, "Oh, yeah, it was all right." And I'm like, "Well, why was it all right?" And it's nice getting new eyes who are new to the horror industry, giving you information and having a group of people talk about it, and from different eras as well. And I think it's great. I can't stand the horror snobs out there, but I like when there's different opinions, different conversations, and no one's like, "Well, that's it. This is the best way."
No, you can't. I mean, I kid with people, but God, no. Now, Christian must have felt sorry for him, because he's trying to make sure that he doesn't get beat up too bad by saying Halloween 78 is an overrated sack of shit. Leprechaun is way better. And I know Christian is joking, but he's still going to get his ass beat for that anyway. Okay, I think we've pretty much caught up finally. So, Ree, why don't you ask me what's coming up next on the show?
Oh, Lauren, what's coming up on the show? What's next?
Well, so the game show edition of my channel will be returning on Monday. We have 6 contestants, all trying to take down Mr. Christian Hanna Horror, who is the reigning champion of the show at this point. But we have some heavy-duty contestants coming on, man. I bet you better be brushing up on your horror history this time, because I'm not saying you got lucky last time, but there was a couple questions where you seemed pretty relieved when I announced the correct answer. And Christian says that my music sounds a lot like a demo from a Brother Kane album. That's a compliment. Not to Brother Kane, it's not. Because like I said, I'm a shitty guitarist. So, Ree, how can the viewers, and I love the fact that our 2 viewerships actually meshed so well tonight, but how can my side follow you from here on out?
I don't really stream much on YouTube, but I do put videos up on there, so they can check me out over there at ReanimateHer. I create live content over on Twitch, so twitch.tv/ReanimateHer, and I'm on Twitter with ReanimateHer with the underscore at the end of the R, because someone took my name.
That's awful.
And they're not even active. They're not active.
You might notice there's a 1 at the end of my channel name for a reason. Never mind that I have a collection of short stories that used the title 10 frickin' years ago. Anyway, YouTube doesn't particularly care, as we know.
No.
Update for everyone out there wondering if YouTube cares about me at all. No, my new beginning autopsy video is still not available. So I got reported for content, for abusive content. There's nothing in the video whatsoever, but hopefully someday it'll be back up, or I'll just re-up it and hope they don't notice. Whatever. Thanks, YouTube.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I don't. That's why I don't live stream on YouTube. There's a reason why I went to Twitch when Mixer closed down instead of YouTube.
And I mean, maybe that's where I'll end up. I don't know. I really don't know.
I have more freedoms on Twitch than I would on YouTube. I've been on YouTube for quite some time. I've read their terms of service and all of these things, and I have to edit the hell out of my videos because either they'll get reported or somebody from a third party will be like, I own that copyright. And I'm like, no, you don't, because I have the license. So I don't really, YouTube is not my thing.
Yeah, it's a big platform, and for now I'm here, but we'll see where the future goes. But I mean, they have to have some consistency to their rules, and they have to have some reasonable oversight. And they got to keep their own politics out of it, because I think sometimes that's most of it.
Yeah, they can censor whatever they want.
So Christian is saying that the questions are too hard on Critical Pursuit. Sir, you're setting yourself up again. You're trying to downplay you retaining the crown. So all I'm saying is that one of the contestants might be a gentleman named Stone Gassman, who you may know is probably the most knowledgeable guy in film in our circle of friends. So I'm just saying, just spend the weekend wisely, sir. Spend the weekend wisely.
What time does your show go?
8 o'clock on Monday.
8 o'clock Eastern.
Eastern, yes. American time.
Well, we have Eastern here. I'm in Mountain.
Yeah. So you're an hour later.
2 hours behind you. Yeah, 2 hours behind you.
Well, it'll be available too if you can't catch us live. I'd love you to be in the chat and pick on these guys with me. But you'll see, even in this hot weather, I wear a suit for the game show and sweat my ass off.
6 o'clock my time. I can probably get. I can probably get to that.
Well, maybe we should be looking at August for you to be on it.
Possibly.
You hear that, Christian? Start sweating now, buddy.
Ah.
All right, so I may do a stream this weekend, but again, I'll only announce it right before, because those are kind of fly-by-night kind of things. But otherwise, I will see you all on Monday. I hope we've made some new friends out there on both sides. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a great one.